we on? Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a dark night that probably will be stormy later. So thank you for coming out. It is 2nd of February, it's 6:30, and we're here for the People and Health Overview Committee meeting. You will have noticed we have moved into a committee room rather than the chamber. I hope that makes for a kind of a workman-like kind of environment where we can look at the policies and slightly less formal, but hopefully we can be productive in here. We have no apologies for absence tonight. So that's item number 1 on the agenda. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. I'm going to ask committee members if anybody has a declaration of interest on any of the agenda items. I'm going to take that silence as a no. I am going to ask about the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of September 2025, which is our last meeting. It's not for discussion. I just need you to make a decision on whether you think that those minutes are an accurate record of what happened on that night. So I'm going to propose them as an accurate record. There we go. Gingy is my seconder. Thank you. Can I have a vote? A show of hands. Go. That's most people. There we go. So we're going to take those as an accurate record. The next item on the agenda is public participation. We've had no questions received from members of the public. The next item is questions from councillors, and we have had no questions from councillors. The next item on the agenda, item 6, is urgent items, and there are none. And now the main meat of the meeting is item number 7. So the Health and Wellbeing Board Strategy Development. So we have a presentation from Councillor Steve Robinson, who is Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care. Over to you, Steve.
I have to introduce myself again. My name is Councillor Steve Robinson. Otherwise, George will shout at me. Adult Social Care. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time this evening. I'm pleased to introduce this report on how we're going to refresh Dorset's Health and Wellbeing Board strategy, which is an important step in strengthening how we're going to work across the whole system to improve health, wellbeing and prevention within our communities, and we'll maybe talk a bit about that in a little while. There are a number of key reasons why this is really important by way of introduction. Firstly, the strategy refresh will accelerate our shift towards prevention-focused, community-led, integrated care, which is very much the theme of the moment and is very much in line with the NHS 10-year plan. It aligns closely with the community's role priority and supports the long-term aim of helping people to live healthier lives for longer, reducing reliance on acute services, which are also expensive services. This approach is fundamentally different from previous strategies. It will be co-produced with residents, partners and other service providers through community conversations and structured engagement events. This gives us a strategy that has proper ownership across the whole system, rather than one agency dictating to others. It's going to be supported by a clear outcomes framework, and so that we can measure actual outputs and outcomes and demonstrate value for our residents. The third reason is the changes that we're very aware of within the NHS at the moment. NHS structural changes mean that we need a modernised strategy that reflects Dorset's evolving role in health and care. With the integrated care partnerships effectively being abolished, this time last year we had the Integrated Care Partnership, which no longer meets. The Integrated Care Board is now disappearing into a multi-region state, which leaves a gap in which the Health and Wellbeing Board can expand and develop. With Integrated Care Partnerships being abolished, the Health and Wellbeing Board becomes a key place-based leadership forum. The refresh ensures that we're getting ready for that responsibility. These new arrangements are going to bring the whole council together behind a single prevention agenda. Through an internal cross-council steering group, the reference group, we're going to marshal the collective assets across adults, children's, public health, place, housing and the rest to deliver joined-up, system-wide change. And finally, this work strengthens our statutory responsibilities whilst also preparing Dorset for future national requirements. It ensures we continue to meet duties such as the JSNA, the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, and the Better Care Fund oversight, which are critical. And it positions us to deliver the new neighbourhood health delivery plan that's required under the NHS 10-year approach. So, in summary, this refreshed strategy provides the structure, the partnership, and the focus that we need to deliver prevention at scale across the whole county and improve health outcomes for the people of Dorset. So I commend this report and I'll hand over to Rachel to lead our presentation.
Very much. Good evening. My name is Rachel Partridge. I'm Deputy Director of Public Health and Prevention. Apologies from Sam Crowe, who couldn't be here to support this paper and this item. You'll be pleased to know that a very well-informed, learned chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board has set the context perfectly. So in terms of the overview and presentation, I'll be really quick, but thought it was a good opportunity to come before you at the overview committee to really get a sense of how we're trying to shape this and take the Health and Wellbeing Board and the development of the strategy in a new way, and for it to be, as Councillor Robinson's illustrated, the place where we as Dorset Council can really work in that partnership space and prevention and early intervention and integration of services. So if we go, as already has been alluded to, there's a lot of change, and this feels like a really good opportunity to take the opportunity of having that change and refresh how we approach things. There's a whole focus around the Dorset Council's and Communities for All, and the focus very strongly on developing us and having a narrative and a framework around prevention. Hence why, as Director of Public Health and Prevention, Sam's really keen to be here to start exploring that with us as an overview committee, and also in terms of the opportunity of all the changes that are happening in NHS structures. It's obviously in a time of considerable change, but it gives us a chance and an opportunity to really refresh how we work closely with them. There is that recognition that as an ICB cluster, there will be much more strategic commissioning at a much bigger geography, but it's why we endorse need to have a really strong and effective place where we can do business with NHS and other key partners, including the voluntary community sector, to make sure we have a really clear, joined up picture of how we're working to shape and support the health and wellbeing nation here in Dorset. So very much seizing the opportunity. We have to refresh the strategy anyway. It's been, we've had a strategy in place, but it's very much time for a review. So we thought it was a really good opportunity to take time to approach this differently and not write a strategy from a professional in a darkened room. Not that we would think we've done that, but that has been a suggestion that we can do more to co-produce our strategies. So this is why we're going to take some time. That's why we felt it was really important to bring it here for your comments and consideration as a way of doing business. I think one of the most important points is the fact that we are deliberately developing two stakeholder groups. So we're very much piloting a new way of working internally. So I'm looking around the room and I can see some learned colleagues that I should be working with in terms of the internal steering group. So making sure that we have representation from across the council, from all of the big directors to really have a chance to shape our approach to the prevention and the integration of services perspective, to make sure we've got that clear space where we can have line of sight and articulate very clearly Dorset Council perspective, understanding the work that we're doing and having really clear line of sight between the programmes of integration that we have going on. We can see we've mentioned a few of the big ticket items that we know from a Dorset Council perspective we're working on. It will also give us space to talk through and work through the implications of the neighbourhood health plan. So we've referenced the changes to integrated care boards and clustering. As part of that, each place, and for this purpose we are taking Dorset Council to be replaced, there needs to be a neighbourhood health plan. We would be really keen to make sure those two plans look and feel very similar. They inform each other. We work together on understanding the relationship between the two and having that opportunity to highlight the importance of that integration and intervention. So we're trying to hit that sweet spot, but as you can imagine, this is very much a test and learn. We're working on how to do it from a Dorset Council cross-organisational perspective to fit in with the community's role and framework of prevention. And we're trying to do this with colleagues learning to work in a different geography from an NHS perspective. But it feels like a really exciting opportunity. So I'm in danger of being enthusiastic and excited, even on a Monday rainy evening. But it felt like a good opportunity to surface and discuss and get your comments with you for that. So I've talked about the opportunities, I've talked about the context that we've been in, and I've given an overview of how we want to approach it in terms of having the two stakeholders and very much doing a test and learn and co-production and engagement. So in the spirit of that, we have brought it before you with some quite high level recommendations, just in terms of you supporting and also giving input and feedback into the process and sense checking our approach in the first instance. So the recommendations is for the committee to support this approach to strategy development, recognising that this is going to take a bit more time, but very much in the spirit of co-production and engagement, to endorse the health and well-being, overseeing the development of the prevention-focused joined-up care, and that very much from a partnership perspective, and noting the establishments of the internal steering group, which I've alluded to, and also the external reference group, where we will very much be encouraging feedback from trusted colleagues from a whole range of stakeholders and networks, including voluntary and community sector, including NHS, but also wider stakeholders and partners. So we're trying to use the existing stakeholder reference groups and networks to really get as much insight and evolution to make sure that this is a truly co-produced approach. So we are testing, we are learning, and we are presenting a plan of an approach rather than the strategy itself. Would welcome any thoughts and
Thank you very much. Sarah Longdon, have you got anything you'd like to say?
I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very much the approach to the strategy, just to highlight the point that outcomes focused, strategy based, make it much clearer, more transparent and easier to track progress, achieving our aims. So that will take a bit of time to develop. So that's a key part of the approach we want to take.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to open this item up for discussion. Would anybody like to make a comment? Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a very good strategy. I really welcome it, but is the NHS on board with all this? Are they aware of what we are doing and going along with us? We all know that the NHS sometimes, and I know they've got a 10-year plan, but they are being directed probably slightly not in line with us. So how are you going to actually, get them on board and actually work with us on this strategy? Thank you.
NHS representative co-chairing Health and Wellbeing Board, but also at a higher strategic level. I've recently been able to introduce the Chief Executive of University Hospitals Dorset and the Chief Executive of Dorset Council to meet together to agree strategy and to agree principles, because the key thing is to develop a shared vision. And as long as our Chief Executives can get together to do that, then I think we will have closer alignment between the way that we're working, that will be more cost effective and be more health effective within communities. So yeah, this is a good point, but yes, we are working on that.
Can I just make a point, Chairman, that all those acronyms or your presentation and in this it's difficult to follow if you've got at least 3 or 4 acronyms in one sentence or paragraph. And it's quite good to have either an index at the end or something that you can refer to, or at least at the end of the first, thing that says integrated care board or whatever it might be, because you've got integrated care board, partnership, all sorts of different ones. It would be nice if you're going to use an acronym later on, can you make sure that we know at the beginning or when it's first said that you can refer back to it. I tend to write down anything like that and then refer back to it myself, so I can follow the text rather than think, oh heck, what's that supposed to mean? Because you just lose your train of thought.
Too many PLAs.
It might be difficult for me, but
yeah, it's a good point. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Somper.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't sit on this committee, but if you're happy for me to, thank you very much. Yes, Councillor James Somper, Beacon Ward. Thank you very much for the report. I know an awful lot of work will have gone into it. Just a couple of questions, if I may, actually really based on your slides. The ICB cluster operation, which will be more strategic, be a more strategic commissioner. What does that mean? How's that going to show itself?
What we think, because I don't think that things have actually been finalised, to be honest, but the way that things are looking at the moment is that the ICB, working across multiple areas, will have overall responsibility for commissioning health outputs within populations. What it won't have is in-area responsibility. And so there's currently a debate going on about whether existing health and wellbeing boards take on that commissioning role directly from the NHS, which would be our preference as Dorset Council, or a separate NHS-sponsored commissioning body is set up that effectively would not work necessarily as harmoniously with us as we would if we were running it. So that the results of that are not yet known. As soon as they are, we'll have a little more, a few more things to talk about. The ideal is that the Health and Wellbeing Board will become the commissioning agent for health within local places, local communities, sponsored through the ICB, the Integrated Care.
That's an interesting development. It will give the Health and Wellbeing Board quite a lot of power.
I don't see it as power. What I see as communication. If we can
commissioning itself.
Well, it will only be able to commission across multiple partners. So the way that it's in a world of Teslas, I remain fairly committed to petrol engines, and there's the key part of the petrol engine that's most fascinating is the carburettor. And all the air goes in and all the petrol goes in, it mixes it all together in the right thing, and then it outputs it into the actual engine. I know, sorry. But so
I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, we mix together these different sources, these different ideas, these different visions, and produce something that everybody agrees is commissionable without actually having the power to do itself, because it doesn't have particular budgets other than the Better Care.
Because otherwise you might be looking at something like a pan-area commissioning if it's within that cluster. Obviously we have pan-Dorset commissioning with ICB, as we know, it's just the two local authorities, but now it's going to be a much wider area. That would be a danger, I think, that we would, and I completely understand why you would wish to keep that within and not have that. I suppose it depends how much influence there is and how that unwinds as that work carries on. Do you know how far forward other stakeholder groups are in their own positioning here?
There was requests for information that went out just before Christmas, but we don't know. I think that the key thing about the power thing is actually it's got greater accountability to place to scrutiny as well. So Rachel, do you want to come in?
And to pick up on both of the questions, there was a national call for convened by the Association of Directors of specifically talking about the evolution of health and wellbeing in the context of the 10-year plan, which is very much moving towards that focus on prevention. And it's an emerging picture. I think you articulately indicated that it's emerging. So working closely with colleagues in Dorset and in we are looking to position where we make sense of how we can do together for Dorset and look at Dorset perspective. So that importance around place-based and that focus around us articulating that we already have a forum whereby NHS colleagues are represented, voluntary and community sector represented, then that is existing, really effective place that we know each other and we can do business. So we're trying to articulate, and Sam being the SRO Dorset Council into the NHS programme is really important, but also developing the Dorset Council framework of prevention, that coming together under the Dorset Health and Wellbeing Board feels like a really neat opportunity to fit these two together. So we're working really closely with colleagues from an NHS Dorset based perspective, and they're working through what that means and how that feels. But we know the place director, we know work day in, day out with colleagues. So we're hoping, we are advocating that this is a really effective opportunity to do that and do our business together in this place.
If I may, just one more question, Chairman, thank you very much. Yes, what might we look for in the first year to see that there's some momentum with this? Any particular areas where you're hoping to see quick wins?
I think.
If I start off and then yeah.
There might not be, you might not have identified them yet.
Because this is part of the consultation process, so we're not presenting to you really a finalised document, but we're looking for input to it as well, and this will go on to cabinet as well, doesn't it? Go cabinet or to council? Health and wellbeing. So within 12 months, I would like to have seen that we've actually got the right people around the table. We know NHS are on board, but GPs, dentists, fire, police, people who are involved in communities. It'd be nice to see the integrated neighbourhood teams actually start to solidify and develop their networks and more. So within a year, I'd like to actually see it up and ready to operate rather than be able to hit the ground running sort of from April.
I agree with that. And in terms of recognising this is a test and learn approach, we're really keen. We haven't yet had our first stakeholder meeting. We have that booked in for the end of February. That feels like another sense check that this is the right way. We're building on existing stakeholder networks, very kindly sharing space with colleagues to have that initial consultation. We will be developing an outcomes framework. What's really important is it's recognising we've already got some really big pieces of transformation happening in our system already, and we need to have a place where we continue to have good oversight and shared understanding and monitoring, so that we've got a busy agenda on really great, exciting stuff that's developing from a Dorset Council's perspective. That work agenda doesn't go away. In fact, that needs to be amplified through the work of it and connected in with the development of the neighbourhood strategy. So I think outcomes frameworks, effective meeting, positive feedback from our key stakeholders, including the voluntary and community sector, that this feels like a good way of doing business, that they feel like they're being listened to and being heard, and then kind of focus on prevention. She says, looking checking with.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's in this first year, it's getting those outcomes defined and agreed that are appropriate and important, not just for us as Dorset Council, but for our partners in the community as well. What are the right outcomes that we're trying to achieve? Talk about health and care transformation and prevention. It's long-term work. We need to get the right data, the right evidence to track those outcomes. You know, and we want to get that right. And then what is the work that's going to achieve that, that is relevant for all of our partners? So that's the early work of this next phase.
Thank you, Officer. That was very thorough response. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you. Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale Ward. I went to one of these boards once. I haven't been back since. In section 3.2 here, and this picks up on Councillor Saunders' point, having a refreshed strategy and outcomes framework will support more focused delivery of prevention. Can we be, this is a consultation, in the final document you present, can you be much more granular about that? You know, this is the type of prevention that we think we can achieve. And these are the milestones, and this is what we've achieved against it. Because this report, which has just disappeared, is very long on words. It's very short on detail that we can actually see something being achieved.
I think that's a fair comment. Overall, it's going to be issues around healthy life expectancy, living well, aging well, but there will then be subsections that come out to monitoring falls within communities, monitoring people leaving hospital within timescales, much of which we already monitor through the Better Care Fund monitoring system. But actually, I understand why you didn't come back after having attended one. It can be a little obtuse, some of the paperwork, but there are lots of really good pieces of work going on that I think we should be shining a light on and teasing out to make sure that we're focusing on the right stuff and using the money in the best way. So I agree with you, but we're starting off with the overall ambitions, and then we're sort of working down into granularity rather than starting off with some of the basics. But then we want to be able to look at outcomes rather than just dictate 10 things we want to have as outputs.
Just to supplement, this is deliberately brought early in the development because the way we're proposing to do it as Dorset Council and the way we're approaching developing the strategy feels like we're trying to do something different, and it was felt to be absolutely the right thing to do, to give early oversight, to get your feedback, to get that sense that this is the direction we should be going from a Dorset Council perspective, and the ambition to join in with partners in this space to create one space where we can do that partnership, early integration, focus on prevention, supported by very clear, robust outcomes framework. And I do like to be clear on things, so bringing the concept and the approach does feel early. It is really early in that approach, but to signal that this is working collectively. Yes, we want to do it, and we absolutely, the reason we're wanting to do it is we believe that we deliver better outcomes for Dorset residents, working collectively and more efficiently in this way, both within Dorset Council and also with our partner organisations, and being informed by our key stakeholders. It feels like that's got to be a better way of doing it. It just takes a bit more time, and we want to be transparent about this is what we're trying.
Being blunt, show me the money as well as the outcomes for people.
Happy?
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Stella Jones, Dorchester East. I was going to ask a very similar question about prevention, because we've been talking about it for a long time. Good to hear what you've been saying. The partnerships one is an excellent way forward. And this is going to be overseen by the Health and Wellbeing Board, is it? Will it come back to this committee for regular reviews?
It will go to scrutiny once it's up and in place, but I refer to you may well know better than I do.
It does feel more like a scrutiny issue, doesn't it, than an overview issue.
George, can we ask George? George,
As it's being developed, if there's opportunities for the committee to help develop the strategy in any way, then there would be opportunities for the committee to get involved, either formally through committee meetings or informally.
And we're absolutely open to show the working, show how it's developed, so it can be iterated and you can input into it. I hear the challenge, so the next iteration would need to be firmed up and a bit more fully developed, maybe through after discussion at the Health and Wellbeing Board in terms of the feedback, and after the initial stakeholder meeting, we could kind of show that working towards. So rather than waiting until it's a final signed off strategy, we could bring a good draft and an update on how the approach has worked and whether and how it feels like it's working, because then we're shaping the process.
So are you telling us if there's an appetite for it among the committee members, you'd be willing to bring it back?
Absolutely.
I mean, that one of the things that Jindy and I have been talking about, Councillor Atwell and I have been talking about, is getting the committee more involved in terms of looking at the forward plan. So watch this space in terms of emails coming your way in terms of sorting that out. But yeah, so are you happy, Councillor Jones? Councillor Orrell.
Councillor Orrell, Melcombe Regis, which is Weymouth Town Centre. I will support the strategy. It is worth a try and bring these things together. It has been over the years. The trouble is trying to do it within the culture of the NHS. The way the NHS works is it tends to concentrate power and money towards big shiny hospitals and not towards community services and prevention, whereas for every £1 spent, you probably save more lives in prevention than you do building a new scanner or paying for a fairly useless second or third line cancer drug. So that's always the challenge. And the NHS is also another principle, the Tudor Hart inverse care law. It tends to spend more money in prosperous areas which have good health and spend less in poor areas with poor health. I notice on page 11 and 13, you commit yourself to reducing health inequalities. So how are you going to hold the NHS to account and persuade it to move its money where it's been badly spent into areas where it's needed?
I'm hopeful that the NHS 10-year plan has that ambition behind it, that it will work more within communities and stopping people needing hospital in the first place, rather than doing expensive treatments once they're there and then not being able to discharge them. So effectively, we'll be using the Better Care Fund to redistribute NHS funding into communities. So that hopefully will be a good way of linking in with what we were saying earlier. We believe we know our communities better than the NHS, those communities, and therefore working together, we will be able to help them target support, particularly the development of virtual hospitals, which is also in the NHS 10-year plan, and services within communities more effectively. That's the intention, that's the plan, that's the hope.
Are you happy, Councillor Orrell?
Yes,
Enough.
enough.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Atwell, Coal Hill and Wimborne East. Essentially, I just want to reiterate Councillor Jones's point, and I think Councillor Mercer and Sompo were alluding to the same thing about having some point where you come back in front of the committee and we get that input. So basically, I want to sort of put you on the spot in terms of a date, right, or like when that would be, because I do feel if we just go, right, here you go, you're going to try out this strategy, and then we see it at, I don't know, years' time. At that point, there's not any chance of us actually adding anything to that process. So I would like some kind of time frame, really, of when we can expect to have you back in front of us, so we can all say, actually, we don't like the way that the direction it's gone. Maybe you need to be thinking about doing X, Y, or Z. Because as you said, this is in its embryonic stage, so there's not a lot there. So I do think we need to sort of bring it back to the committee for us to see what you've sort of put together, even if it's in a skeletal form, and then we can say, actually, we either like that or we think something needs to be added or removed, whichever way it works. Can I sort of put you on the spot in terms of dates? You know,
Can we suggest
yeah.
a 6-month review, subject to what the agenda fits? We might be in the middle of summer holidays at that point, where we can tell you how much progress we've made, out on what still remains to be done. By that time, we'll have been able to approach a number of the other stakeholders and got the lie of the land, and so actually we'll be able to come together with more a strength of feeling. If nothing else, this whole principle is about consulting with stakeholders, and it feels very appropriate that we continue to consult with yourselves to say, actually, this feels right, this feels good, or we've had a problem with that. So yes, if we give you an update in 6 months without necessarily promising a completed piece of work, just to protect Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. I don't think anyone does expect a finished piece of work. It's better for us to be involved in the process rather than the finished piece anyway. So I think that's kind of what that would be perfect. So
to be honest, I'm going to say it. This is genuinely a really exciting opportunity to bring different agencies together to talk about shared opportunities and vision. The reality is that it's going to take some months of slogging away to find the right people at the right levels that have got available times to talk about things and then get things shaped together. So vision has to be rooted in reality, but so a 6-month update would be great, and then we can actually see what's going on there.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Azard.
Thank you. I omitted to say who I was before. I'm Councillor Lezard from Wareham Ward. Just a comment, and you were saying about being all inclusive in stakeholders. I noticed you mentioned about pharmacies in there. With the government legislation changing for pharmacies and how important they are to the community, especially the older community, because you rely heavily if you come out of hospital or even if you're on medication, on the pharmacies to be open, to be available, to actually online. And some of that legislation recently has opened up that opportunity. So you don't have to have the pharmacist on board on the premises if they've already said, okay, these people, lots of medicines are already settled on the shelf. These people can come in and get them. The thing is, it is important to have that, and there is some more legislation coming down the line for pharmacies. But also, I would like to see, because the regulations are changing for driving licenses for older people, for every 3 years having your eyes tested or whatever it is, it might be other sort of tests, but opticians ought to be added into your mix, I think. And remember, there is usually with these bodies, there is an overarching sort of organisation that is, and I'm sure in this county it can be some representative from that body that represents that group of opticians or whatever they are, without making it too onerous. But I think when you've got government legislation coming along the line, and a lot of that is worrying for older generations, what does it involve? How am I going to actually get over this? How is it going to work? Is it going to cost me money? Is it doing this and that and the other? So those sorts of things, if you're going to integrate things, all these little things that are going on, especially the government regulations that are coming down the line, need to be added in. Is that something that you thought of?
Pharmacies, certainly. We've already had 2 papers and challenged pharmacies on a number of areas. There are a number of other local health services, of which opticians is one, but ears would be another. Feet clinics would be another, all of which come together working locally. I think by the time we've got everybody around one table, it gets to be a very, very large table. Then they need a bigger table. But within the community conversations aspect of what we want to do, we want to be able to bring those groups together locally to talk about what local need is and identify shortfalls. So the community conversations side of things would fulfill that rather than get everybody sitting around a very large table. But it's a good point, and that's how we would address it.
Yeah, you're thinking about one representative for the whole of Dorset, or if you're having regional things in Dorset or area ones, well, like you do with planning boards, well, that would be 3 different people. It wouldn't be loads of people from one area coming. It'll be one representative for that group of people.
We will work on a mechanism to make that work. There is a future paper coming based called Community Conversations. And so that will bring in opportunities for how those groups will work together, and then key themes across different areas will be drawn out from that, and then that will feed in. So there is a mechanism for doing that, I believe.
Welcome what that's what I was saying about having another, look at this in 6 months' time, and whatever you suggest, to actually really tease out anything else that we need to add in. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think everybody who has wanted to make a comment or ask a question has done so. So the recommendation is written in your paperwork. It's in 3 parts, A, B, and C. We're going to take them all together. I'm looking for somebody to propose the motion, Councillor Jones, and I'm looking for somebody to second, Councillor Holloway. Thank you very much. Do we need to show hands, George? So I would like to, all those in favour, please raise your hand. That is unanimous.
Any against?
Oh, and anybody, anyone against? There's nobody left. And anybody abstaining?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor. Oh,
Yeah, there's two councillors here who don't speak.
Because Councillor Somers in, I thought she presumed she was. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Somers.
No, I think yeah. I said so. I think everybody voted for. So thank you, everybody. So that is item 7 over, and then item 8 is towards a new model of day opportunities. Now this is something that we are going to have to keep to time on this one. I think this is going to attract lots of comments. I will go to Councillor Robertson first for your presentation, Councillor Robertson.
Who's on my left, the gentleman on my right. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to introduce this report, the new model of day opportunities. This is a significant step forward in how we're going to support adults across the whole of Dorset. And I think I want to begin by recognising that all the people that contributed, hundreds of residents, families, carers, voluntary groups and partners made their voices heard through engagement exercises in 2021, 2023, and again in the formal consultations in 2025. We have definitely consulted. I want to extend my thanks to everybody who responded, whether through surveys, conversations, workshops, or written feedback. The proposals before you today have been shaped with people, not done to people. And that principle is what sits at the heart of this new model. So this report makes clear that day opportunities are going to remain vital for well-being, independence and inclusion for around 600 Dorset residents. But it also recognises that expectations and needs are changing. Our approaches must evolve accordingly. So tonight, there are a few key points that reflect the aspirations of our communities and the directions. Firstly, this paper offers greater flexibility, choice and personalisation. Consultation feedback shows a strong desire, particularly amongst younger adults, for more diverse community-based opportunities that help build skills, confidence and independence. The proposals in the paper support this, included mostly through the wider use of direct payments and individual service funds, ISFs. Second, the model retains and strengthens the specialist building-based support for those who really need it. While some people want to access activities within their local communities, others require dedicated environments and specialist provision, and the plan maintains these services, including specialist hubs in Burwood and Ridgeway, ensuring that no one is left out or left behind. It also makes better use of local community assets, from libraries and children and family centres to voluntary sector venues and neighbourhood-based services. This aligns with Dorset Council's wider ambitions for integrated neighbourhood teams, the prevention agenda that we've talked about, early help and communities for all priorities. It supports a stronger, more resilient local care and support market through community brokerage, partnership with the voluntary sector and revised commissioning with Care Dorset and independent providers. We're expanding and strengthening the choices that are available locally. So finally, this work puts us on a path towards financial sustainability and future-proofing services beyond just year-by-year assurances. The approach promotes independence. It uses resources more efficiently and ensures that service can adapt to changing need, meeting our statutory duties while supporting better long-term outcomes. So in closing, I want to thank everyone who contributed to shaping these proposals. Their insight, their concerns, their aspirations, and their lived experiences have been invaluable. This work is not about withdrawing services. It's about strengthening them, modernising them, and creating a model that we build with our communities. Hand over to Sam and John for any.
Nothing more to add on the introduction, but happy to go to questions.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Parks.
Yeah. So Councillor Mike Parks, Ferndown North, and I am very grateful to Councillor Robinson for phoning me, or we had a phone conversation a couple of weeks ago prior to this report, because Ferndown was previously identified to close, which I broadly supported. Well, I actually now broadly support what's being proposed specifically for Ferndown, that we are still going to provide a smaller facility there as being proposed, and better utilisation of the building. I dropped some points into an email, but I just wanted to just flag it up at this meeting that the building in the centre of Ferndown, for those that don't know, it is on quite a large footprint for quite a small usage of Care Dorset, and it makes sense that that building is better utilised. There are a number of, or a couple of community groups currently using that building for nothing, which Councillor Lugg and myself have been sort of talking about to officers for a number of years, that doesn't seem right. That things like and I'm not just singling out, but I use this as an example, the community larder, for example, is being effectively subsidised by adult social care funds from Dorset Council, which doesn't seem right. So all those user groups need to be paying a commercial, some sort of rent for those buildings, which I understand. Because of its town centre location, it actually lends itself to a more commercial use. And I think we're missing an opportunity if we don't explore commercial opportunities for something that's right in the middle of the precinct in the town centre, for that space not being used by Care Dorset. And the concern I've had, and I've spoke today with the town clerk of Ferndown Town Council, is that the danger of opening as a community hub is we're competing with other already underutilised spaces in Ferndown, the Barrington Centre, the library, the hub up at Trickett's Cross, that are all competing for those community groups, and we've got another one, and it's fighting against. So there's probably not the need, and this has probably gone a bit further since I spoke to Councillor Robinson. There isn't the need for more community facilities, whether we can provide different services there, but again, really concerned that if we draw stuff, for example, from the community hub at Trickett's Cross, where the greatest need is, we're actually, it becomes counterintuitive to those members of the public that are probably the biggest users are up on that estate, dragging them in the centre. So I just really wanted to say, A, I support it, but B, we need to really think about how we use that building better. And I don't think just saying it's a community hub does justice for that building. And the one last sort of tongue-in-cheek I'll say is, can we caveat this whole use of that building, that if eventually we get a town centre regeneration, that building could be freed up, because it lends itself massively to that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Parks. Following our conversation, we rewrote the paper slightly, which specifically used the word complementing, not competing with existing provision, which I thought was a point very well made, and also the develop the centre of people towards becoming financially viable. So those are things, after speaking to yourself and Councillor Love, that I thought feed in there, and I hope that helps shape the work. I agree completely. If the work comes that we can actually redevelop Ferndown Town Centre completely, everything is on the table, so I'd agree with that. I feel that there are opportunities to do more in the area, but I'm meeting with Councillor Robinson, I think this week, to have a walk around Trickett's Cross and to make sure that she knows that I can't speak for children's services, but I have no intention of taking services away from Trickett's Cross, because I'm aware very much of the transport difficulties that exist for people in that area, and that anything that goes in would complement, not replace, work that was going on in Trickett's Cross.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just come back? So yeah, and specifically the Barrington Centre, the town clerk was very concerned that if we open space up there, which is literally a building next door, you know, that building, as you from a previous life, you know how fragile the stability of that running that building is. By putting something next door that's competing with it, we run the risk of the town council turning around and going, well, we'll just hand it back to Dorset Council, and then Dorset Council's got another problem. So we don't want to end up creating another problem for ourselves with that.
I agree. I think in both our previous slides, we can maybe identify opportunities there as well, and that over the coming months there may be a number of conversations we can have about getting your wisdom and sycophantic, getting your input into what will work best within your ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Paul, Corporate Director, Commission and Improvements, just supporting Steve and responding to those points. So principles across the piece are: step one is making sure we've got the right services, particularly for day opportunities for communities in their communities. So that'll be our first step in part of that conversation. And then step two really is about how do we use the assets more generally across the portfolio to support some of that. And obviously council parts has referenced that one in Ferndale. So really intention then is to move towards making use of those assets in the community much better to support that wider benefit agenda. So what else can those community assets support, potentially wider than we currently have got those at the moment? So that's a bit of a broader conversation that needs to take place. That's some of the next steps that we need to explore.
Very much. You happy? Okay. Councillor Somper again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, for the conversation that we had. Was it last week?
Possibly.
The week before? Yes, very helpful. I hadn't yet read fully the papers, so I brought up the points that that I had wanted to highlight with you then, and I've got a few other points if I may, Chairman. I know you're.
I am looking at the
try and keep it
yeah, nice and brief. Thank you.
So the first one I want to bring up is so basically overall support the work. Obviously, having been involved with it quite closely, so fully aware of the processes that you've had to go through to get to this point. So I suppose I want to focus on transport in particular, and there's another issue that I need to bring up because it was a gaping hole that I was alarmed about. So obviously the Care Act, through the Care Act, the council's got a duty to ensure that eligible needs are met in practice and not just in policy. So I'm telling you things you already know. So I suppose the issue around rural areas is what concerns me, and the lack of available transport. So enabling people to physically access these day opportunities under a much more dispersed model, community-based model, where public transport is basically limited or non-existent. So clearly there's an element in here around direct payments, which I'm assuming is where you would be focusing some of that on. But you know, how realistic and how affordable is that going to be in practice, and how do we know that that's not going to add financial pressures to our residents, add pressures onto carers, and also onto the council? So that financial burden in rural areas, I think, is something that I'm not sure has been fully assessed. You may well tell me I'm wrong, but I'd like some reassurance, please. I think so I'll leave it there on that. I don't want to sort of push too hard on these points, but I do think, and I know obviously at Cabinet last week there was a discussion again, but it was very high level, and I think it's very high level in this report. I don't think there's detail around how that's actually going to be addressed, and that problem is growing. It isn't shrinking. So I'd like some reassurance that members might like assurance. Do you want to just respond to that, or do you want me to go on to my other point?
My initial response is I agree completely. The direction of travel for this paper is that we want to move focus away from people going to buildings and more services being provided within communities, which directly addresses the issue around transportation and affordability. So I would agree with you, but at the same time, there's a balance between continuity and innovation that we need to keep together, so that the people who are already receiving existing services are not distressed by us removing them or changing them too greatly, and they can experience continuity of care in an environment with which they are familiar, and the desire for new clients to do new things more flexibly within their own local communities. And so this is trying to meet the needs of both, accepting the fact that our buildings cost us money, which is where the financial moving towards shared services comes in. So it's multiple ingredients within the mix, but it does directly address the issues about people not needing or having to travel huge distances to get to services, some of which are not particularly highly technical services, but being able to stay within their own community. So I share your concern, but it's critical part of the way this is developing.
Well, I look forward to seeing that more detail on that as it's developed, because I think it's going to be really critical to the success, actually. The other point, if I may, Chairman, thank you. So obviously this is not a sort of town by town focus, but in the north of Dorset, Gillingham is the fastest growing town. I think it's got 13,000 people in it at the moment, and that's just getting better. There is no explicit mention of Gillingham in your report anywhere, and it doesn't appear that anything has been assessed for the people of Gillingham. I have gone through it, so if I've missed it, I apologise. And as I said, I know it's not a town by town, and I know you're dealing with your buildings, but if this is about expanding services which are local, services which are available locally, and a model to build with communities, and the right services for communities, there are none in Gillingham. I mean, then there will be community activities. We know that, and we know there's some dementia services. There's all sorts of services, but there's no mention of this in your report at all.
Maybe just I might say to speak, but the focus of the paper is on the services that are currently provided through Care Dorset, rather than our approach across the whole of Dorset. Coincidentally, I'm actually going to speak at Gillingham Town Council at the end of April to look at ways that we can develop new services. But Sarah, do you want to?
Sorry, Sarah Perrott, Commissioner Manager, Adult Social Care. I just wanted to come back for the work that we've done. We've concentrated on 13 Care Dorset day centres that are block contracted by Dorset Council. We've done a number of engagement pieces of work with local and community providers in preparation to expand market, because what we're hoping is some of the money that we might be able to take out of the Care Dorset contract will help us to support the community development of day opportunities. We are actually opening our Dorset Care framework in the summer of 26 to encourage small community providers to come on board. We had a big event in Weymouth Pavilion in 2025 just to sow the seed. The biggest problem that we have at the moment is that there are providers in the community that don't realise that they could actually provide what we would term as a day opportunity or a community activity. So, for example, there's conversations to be had with the Extra Care Housing Scheme in Gillingham and Wimborne and many other areas of Dorset, but we are expecting to be doing a lot of work to onboard those small private community providers. And I'm sorry if that doesn't come through in the report.
thank you for that response. And it doesn't come through. It doesn't feel to me there's any acknowledgement of emerging demand. So as you say, there are other places. But obviously in my area, that focus is on Gillingham. And again, in reference to transport, if people are accessing to their nearest town from Gillingham, that will be Shaftesbury. That all has to fit in as well. So that all fits in. And my intention, I'm not challenging the ambition in this at all. I am absolutely not. I just want to ensure that members can be confident that the statutory access, particularly around transport and growth areas, like Gillingham and Wimborne and other places that I haven't looked at, but probably are mentioned, just is being addressed in practice, because I think you have this opportunity to do this with this model, and it's not here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Holloway next. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Ryan Holloway, ward member for Wareham. Not so much of a question, more just of an observation, really, Councillor Robinson. Similar to what Councillor Atwell said in the previous item on our agenda, where you've got on the next steps on a 4.9 on your report. Obviously, this is scheduled to go to Cabinet in March. And really just to, I would say, I think it would be vital, I think, Chair, if we see when it's obviously passed through Cabinet, and when you're obviously looking to get this future model in place, I think it would be vital that the committee should look at this again further down in the timeline. Further down in the timeline, because as you say, Councillor Robinson, this is a evolving model, and clearly you've heard already from members of my colleagues tonight already. It probably would be good to see this again, in a future stage, to see what is working, what is not working, where are the gaps, where do we need to improve, and something like that. And I think that might just be handy for possibly to have this return to the committee at a later stage, just to see how well it's progressing, and just to see if the committee, can come up with any sort of input or ideas to help you basically evolve the model.
Councillor Robinson, how keen are you for that?
The intention of this paper was not to produce an overarching solution to every village and town across Dorset. It was specifically to look at the existing day opportunities. There are a number of other papers that are coming through at the moment. Indeed, the Chief Executive is writing one. Community conversations that we've mentioned earlier, age-friendly conversation, things like that, all of which effectively will come together using a similar methodology to look at needs within communities. So whether it would be this particular paper effectively that would come back, I don't think that would be the case, because this is sort of an enabling paper to move Care Dorset forward and our contract with them forward. But I think the wider issues that have been raised about how do we engage with communities, where are the areas of deprivation, where are the areas of overabundance, would probably be this subject to another report.
Sorry, in summary then.
No. No, sorry, joking aside. I think once this report has gone through, which addresses the needs of day opportunities under Care Dorset, then that piece of work is done, and we're released, and so we're changing the nature of things. However, there is another bigger piece of work to do about how we engage with all the individuals across Dorset, in villages, dealing with issues of rurality, urban issues, those sorts of things, disability. That actually is a much wider issue, and they're fed through separately. I think how we engage people, and I'm going to look to John about how we look for payments, would possibly be something that comes certainly to scrutiny out of it.
Yeah, I think step this piece of work to go back through scrutiny, see whether against its subject. But Steve's right, there's a lot more work to develop the market. that would come back through overview, which would complement this bit. This was really about the care daughter provision, which was quite substantial in this first instance. So getting this bit right first is first.
So that seems like a very reasonable response. Are you happy, Councillor Holloway?
Yeah, no, I think, I understand that obviously some of the elements, as you just pointed out there, Jonathan, is that it would go to scrutiny, and I understand that. But I think, there are some elements that I've been reading through that I think is worth to come back to overview at some point in a later stage.
So Councillor Robertson, sorry, Councillor Atwell has just drawn to my attention that the recommendation for this item is to help shape the draft cabinet report and the future intentions of day opportunities.
Yeah, so what are we voting for? It's not to do that, is what I'm wondering.
So I think we're voting to.
Can we have clarification? Because if you've put the recommendation that we're voting for is to help, who are we voting for to help shape that draft document, that report?
The recommendation is to go to cabinet, that these proposals within the paper go to cabinet.
Why have we got the word then to help shape? Because to me that suggests we're helping shape the report.
So
the wording to me seems to make that's what you're asking. So
the paper that's come to this overview committee has the draft cabinet paper in there. So this committee and the Health and Wellbeing Board will be seeing that draft cabinet paper before going to cabinet for final decision. If there are any recommendations from this committee, they will be fed into cabinet with the paper and any necessary or any changes that officers or cabinet would like to make as a result of this committee discussion.
But then
once it's been to cabinet, then that's it. Yes, once it's been to cabinet, they'll be making the final decision.
Are you happy with that?
Well, I'm not happy with the wording then.
Well,
is what I'm just thinking for a lay person, if I'm looking at that, I would think that what Councillor Holloway is asking for is completely reasonable, because he is asking to shape it, which is the phrasing. So either recommendation needs to be worded differently, surely, unless I'm missing some kind of council speak here that I don't understand. But from a layperson thing, if I was asking people to help shape something, I would be expecting them to help shape it. So I don't know if I'm just being a bit pernickety here, but I do think that either the wording needs to be changed or we should be expecting input. So if the input is now or never, then I guess Councillor Holloway, now or never. But the wording does need to, I think, reflect the fact that we're not asking councillors here to shape it. What we're saying is we want councillors here to recommend what's written to cabinet, surely.
And then cabinet will take the report and use that to shape it, and then it's done.
Yeah. So I think that is not what we're voting for then, is it? That's what I'm asking. That to me. I don't know. I'm just being completely unreasonable, but the wording is not correct if that is not what we're doing.
I would agree with you that that's the wording. We're not. You're not voting that the People and Health Overview help shape the draft committee paper report, because that's the purpose of this meeting.
Yeah.
Following this meeting, which is shaping the report, the report is then recommended to cabinet for approval.
Then maybe either change the wording, or if there's something people want to add now to help shape it, they can do so.
I would not disagree with you.
Thank you. Just wanted to go.
Thank you. Right. Back on track. Councillor Izzard.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bell-Hazard, Wareham Ward. Yeah, the word in there I think would be to help support the draft cabinet paper. I think that would be better and a bit more understandable, because that's what we're doing. We're actually supporting what has already been done. And I, from the start, has been involved in this process. And it's been going on for at least 2 years. 2 years. Yeah, 2023. I think we started this off, so it's been going through the iterations all this time with when it was Tricuro, and then it went to Care Dorset and all the other things like that. So I've been involved with that right from the start, So I would say that we are in a position, from my point of view, that we should be supporting this draft, because we have got to a point now where, and this is a question that I was going to ask, but where we should be supporting it. And I do appreciate that the cabinet member, Councillor Steve Robinson, has run round each area to actually explain exactly what has been going on in their area. And we had actually a Teams meeting, didn't we, about the Wareham area, because they're going to, we've got 2 centres there, and they're going to shut down one, and the whole building is an asset that will be sold on, I think, and won't be used for Dorset Council work. And the other one will then accommodate everything that's going on in Wareham, which actually was going to be the opposite way round, because what happened in the end was we said we want the centre, like Ferndown, to be in the town, not out of town, which we've actually been able to switch to that one. And I appreciate all the work that Councillor Robinson's put in with the changing Dorset Council officers in this as well over the time. And I've been working with the 3 people across there that have been in the council for that time. So I appreciate what's been done. And I've had quite a lot of concern from people from Corfe Mullen that actually go to the Ferndown Centre for the dementia-friendly operations that are going on there. And they go in the Dorset Council minibus that takes them from Corfe Mullen over to Ferndown. That seems a heck of a long way to me. I was saying, why aren't they coming to Wareham? And they said, well, we don't feel that the Wareham is supporting the dementia-friendly as well as the one there. And anyway, that's the one that they were attached to anyway. So I've had a lot of conversations with a couple of people and with the local members in Corfe Mullen. And they said that people tend to go that way instead of coming back to Purbeck. So, and actually the idea that I think it is the Cricket Cross, is it the Cricket's Cross one that does the dementia-friendly situation, and they have a minibus, a Dorset Council minibus to take them there. So that the transport is provided. In Wareham, they've got 2 minibuses that take the day centre people there and back. And I think they're set up that I understand and gone through.
So in terms of this being an overarching paper looking at the strategy, Councillor S,
I think that actually we have come to almost fruition of all of the options for Care Dorset. And as long as people realise it's Care Dorset we're talking about and the options there, rather than everything else that all these people can choose to do if they want to with their money, that they've got, they are giving the money that they can use for whatever opportunities they want, any activities. That's where how things changed over the years, that the day centre has not been used as much in all the areas because of people opting out of that and doing their own choices. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity to go forward with this paper, and I would propose that we take this forward as is for this paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer, you were trying to get my attention earlier, and I'm 53 and I'm deaf, and I don't know what you're saying. I'm so sorry. The floor is yours now.
Could I, Steve Mercer from Blackmore Vale, could I just pick up on Jane Somper's point about places like Gillingham? I appreciate this is a review of Care Dorset, and you've talked about other papers that are coming forward. Whether you do this request by a written response to this committee or ensure it's explicit in the papers that you're producing, but Gillingham currently is about 12,000, 13,000 people. Its neighbourhood plan and the local plan takes it to 22,000 people, which is, I think, bigger than Sherborne and Shaftesbury combined. Where will the needs of those people that require daycare, where will and how will they be met? I don't want an answer necessarily to that now, because I think that's it deserves a better, a bigger response. But how that is met, I am not a North Dorset Gillingham ward member, but if they were here, I know they would want to ask that question.
Surprised we got a response.
Yeah, Jonathan Price, Exec Director. More than happy to bring a piece back just on Gillingham, explain what is their future need with identifying. So probably the easiest way of dealing with.
Happy with that, Councillor Mercer?
Yep.
Fantastic, thank you. So we've spent a long time on this item. I've got two more speakers and I'm not going to take any more after that. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Furman.
That's just a quick one really. It's good to provide all these facilities and activities for people, but it's getting them there. And in a rural area, it's difficult. There are no bus services. It's difficult even to get a taxi sometimes in little villages. Are we going to guarantee that we will still provide transport to get these people to the place, the centre where they have to go? Otherwise, there'll be people still isolated.
So part of the strategy moving forward is to offer direct payments and individual service fees. One of the reasons that we're going to do that is to help shape the market. Enhanced is transport. So we're taking the money that we spend through one contract, redistributing it into the community through those different mechanisms will improve transport. We have got a problem with transport in the area.
It's important that these people, especially isolated in rural areas, that they get out.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you, Councillor Furman.
Even quicker than Councillor Jones. Alex Furman, Councillor for the Mighty Western. Thank you very much. Just going. When I read through this, the only thing I didn't quite like was the understanding of a hub and spoke model. To quote The Office, sounds like management talk to me, David. If we're going to have a if we're going to have the name of a model, let's have it so somebody, to quote Councillor Atwell, that the lay could understand something like network communities or something, community network, something like that. Hub and spoke, what's that? Nobody knows. Sounds like something for a bike.
I think that's a good point. Yes, we'll look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, so in terms of I think everyone's had a chance. They could have put their hand up earlier if they wanted to speak. Recommendation is to help shape the draft cabinet report. But
can I suggest instead of help shape, it's just approve or recommend the draft cabinet report.
There we go. But approve the draft cabinet report. Oh, are we happier with that as a? Because that's what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. So that's what. So we have got the power to do that rather than take the recommendation as written. Can I just, from looking around the room, can I get some nods or shakes of head? What do we think of that as a different proposal? Approve?
Yeah.
I'd already proposed it.
But we've changed it now, though.
We've made it to approve.
Yeah, so changing it to approve. So would you like to propose that, Councillor Ezard? So Councillor Ezard is going to propose that. Who would like to second that? Anybody? Councillor Jones, thank you. And can I get a hands up who would like to vote in favour of that? Who would like to vote against that? And who would like to abstain? Okay, that's it. Got that. Okay. Thank you very much. We are going to move on. We are going to move on to item 9, housing allocations policy. I'm going to go to Councillor Taylor.
Let me just get plugged in. Thank you.
Just take that bit off the top.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Housing allocations. Firstly, I'd like to thank this committee for agreeing to undertake a review of the proposed 2026
to 31 Dorset Council allocation policy. And I look forward to your comments, any comments that you may wish to make. This policy updates the 2020 to 2026 version that was introduced under the previous administration. As a local authority with statutory housing duties, where demand outstrips supply, we have a published housing allocation scheme. As we have this published allocation scheme, it must set out clearly how social housing is allocated in Dorset, and it must give reasonable preference to certain groups, including homeless households, those living in overcrowded accommodation, and people with medical and welfare needs. The scheme must also be regularly reviewed to ensure it remains up to date and compliant with legislation. Residents applying to join our housing register for social housing owned and managed by registered providers across Dorset. Using this register and in line with our allocation scheme, we advise registered providers which applicants are in the greatest housing need by way of a nomination for any vacant or new build properties. The updated policy is scheduled to go live later this year, so your input at this stage is extremely valuable. The amendments we are proposing bring this policy in line with current legislation and guidance introduced since the last version was agreed. It has also undergone extensive consultation, and the results of which are in your pack. I would like to introduce you to Ian Sim, who is our new Corporate Director for Housing, who is going to take this forward and go through the details of this paper for us. Please be kind with him. He's only been in post for a week. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Ian Sim and I'm the Interim Corporate Director of Housing and Community Safety. I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor for the introduction. I don't know whether this is good news or not, but I don't intend to go through every single element or page of this very lengthy report, but I would like to just pick out the key points, namely the proposed amendments to the policy. There is one other amendment which I'd like to add at the bottom following a meeting with Councillor Furman on late Friday evening. You could vote with that one. I'll do that. So as Councillor Taylor has pointed out, 5-year review, the existing policy has been in place for over 5 years. Since then, there have been updated codes of guidance. We did appoint a housing consultant to work with us who brings national perspective and can therefore really give us a lot of information about what other local authorities are doing. There's been case law, statutory implementation, and a lot of learning from implementation of the existing policy. And as we said, quite an extensive consultation process also. With over 750 bits of information from a range of key stakeholders, and all that has been brought together to kind of create the report that's before you tonight. The good news is that the bulk of the existing policy we're proposing remains unchanged. So that's the good news, but we're suggesting a small number of amendments to that policy, which is before you tonight. Key objectives of the policy: transparency. Allocation policies are devils. I think elected members will know they'll probably get quite a lot of requests for information about allocation policy. It's quite complex. So we've got to be transparent within the new policy, make sure that's as simple and as straightforward as possible, as well as being legally compliant and absolutely fair. We do have a significant pressure. There's over nearly 7,000 people on our waiting list, constant flow of homeless households week in, week out, and we undertake over 1,000 lets per annum, or at least our RP partners actually allocate the properties, we make the nominations. We also want to make sure that as the policy comes in, It's clear and concise, and therefore it also aids administrative efficiency as well. We don't want backlogs within the allocation process, so it's important that we get the efficiency right as well. The report itself is incredibly comprehensive. Many appendices showing the outcome of the consultation, recent legislation, advisory notes, etc. And I have to kind of compliment the staff that brought this together. It's been a heck of an exercise to get it to where it is tonight. The small number of amendments that we're proposing, and I'll just very briefly go through them and then open up to questions after that, because I know you'll have read the report. Banding of applications, we believe we can create a simpler, straightforward banding process into 4, looking at priority housing needs, high housing needs, medium and low. A consistent local connection. At the moment, we have local connections which are either 2 years, 3 out of 5 years, or 5 years, and we're proposing, in line with guidance, that be consolidated into a 2-year residential period. Income and savings, we're suggesting that we retain the existing policy on £60,000 income per annum, but that we add into that, and in addition to that, a £16,000 threshold for savings. We are looking at abolishing area-based banding without local connection. This was actually a specific policy that was brought in because of difficult-to-let properties we couldn't let for elderly people. That's now been resolved because we can actually let those properties quite simply. The assessment of overcrowding, we're looking at not using the local housing allowance standard anymore. And again, in terms of guidance, we're bringing in the bedroom standard, which is not as generous as the LHA. We're looking to qualify the homeless duty. Basically, anyone that's homeless that qualifies on the register should be subject to the same checks and balances as others on the list, so that outstanding debt, etc., would preclude that person from being on the housing register. We're also suggesting that we do away with the criteria on housing-related debt. This can be other debt not directly attributable to a person's tenancy or record, such as housing benefit overpayment, and that creates a better accessibility to the register going forward. We're looking to amend and to make more favourable how we deal with service personnel and recognition of armed forces, the armed forces community. And finally, we're looking at the use of quotas, say for people leaving care, or we've got situations where move-on accommodation is silted up and we can't move people on. So there'd be a quota brought into place to allow us to make that transition. The one other additional item which really came out of the blue on Friday, and apologies for that, it was brought to our attention that whereas at the moment, and we're proposing that anyone that owns their own home would be excluded from the list with the exception of certain exclusions to that, it was brought to our attention that what if someone actually owns a property or number of properties via a company, and therefore technically they don't own the property, they're not a homeowner per se at the moment. We would suggest, Chair, that we actually amend the wording to bring that into place, that people that are owner-occupiers directly or own their own property and also own their own property via a company should be excluded as well. I think it's a valid point on that. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. That was a fairly quick run through, but as I say, it's a complex report. It's a detailed policy, but happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you for that. And I would also like to thank Councillor Furman as well. I was at that meeting on Friday afternoon, and yeah, you clearly read it very thoroughly, and there's been some positive amendments to the proposed policy now. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to the item? Councillor James. Oh, Sorry, Councillor Holloway first and then Councillor Jones, sorry.
All right, thank you, Chair. You just regarding where you said about assessment for overcrowding, I was wondering, could you just possibly maybe expand a bit further where you say about obviously the policy used to be bedroom standard, and rather than using a local, rather than using a local housing allowance standard, could you just try and maybe explain to the committee what's different between that policy and the new policy there?
Basically, that we use the local housing allowance now, but we're proposing to go into the bedroom standard, which is guidance that we really need to follow. So to give you an example, looking at that, any person aged 16 years or over would now be changed to any person 21 years or over. So sharing rooms as well. 2 children of the same sex aged 15 years or under would qualify just now, but we're looking at pair of adolescents aged 10 to 20 years of the same sex. So it would be a longer period of time, say for 2 daughters or 2 sons sharing the room. So that would be the kind of changes that we're looking at, and that's standard practice in terms of the bedroom standard. That's clear.
Okay, now I thank you for making that a bit clearer, because obviously it doesn't sort of it doesn't state in the report, you know, what's different between that policy and that one there, because the reason I picked that one up is that overcrowding is a big problem, and I've come across it through casework over the years. I have where where people are obviously in accommodation that obviously are not suited for their needs anymore, but they can't unfortunately move on to a large accommodation because 1, we don't have the stock, or 2, they can't afford obviously to move, or can't afford the new rent or whatever. So so I just thank you for clarifying that, because it's still quite a big issue that we're seeing, and that's just
it is, and I think the bedroom standard being less, I mean, it's kind of like rationing a very scarce resource and making sure that those with absolute priority are dealt with in the way they should be.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Now, obviously, the first thing is that we've got a great shortage of housing altogether. But can I ask, when we got registered providers, we nominate someone, can they turn that person down that we've nominated, and do they interview the tenants so they can actually say they don't want certain people? Because I'm concerned about certain other, some members of the public might never get the house.
They need to have very good grounds as to why they wouldn't rehouse someone. We nominate in accordance with the policy, and we expect that RPs will adhere to the policy that's in place. It's a common policy, allocations policy. They would have to come back and explain to us in detail why they weren't taking any of our nominations or a nomination, and we'd have to consider that very carefully. My knowledge is, which is limited after 6 days in the job, is that happened very rarely in Dorset.
One more question. How long is it now between a house becoming empty and the next tenant moving in, with the empty space between?
Well, that's for individual housing associations or RPs to manage their voids as effectively as they can. There are over 50 RPs that operate within Dorset. Of course, there's the 4 main ones that we do, but I couldn't actually say tonight what their average void rates are, but they could be easily obtainable.
This is a problem. People love to say, we've seen the house empty. Why has it been empty such a long time?
I can try and get that information for you, but it doesn't actually affect the allocation policy yet.
Okay, thank you. We'll go Councillor Atwell, then Councillor Ezard, and then Councillor Quayle.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to ask about this bedroom sort of standard that you were talking about, being between 10 and 20. I don't know, I understand that it's a scarce resource. It just feels completely immoral to me that we could have potentially a 20-year-old sharing space with a 10-year-old, even if they are the same gender. I think that's, for me, it feels a little bit awkward, because somebody who's 18 plus could presumably put themselves on the housing register anyway, couldn't they? So, therefore, I'm trying to think what's the logic between putting that restriction in place if potentially we could end up with somebody else applying for another home to get a private space. You know, is it because we don't have enough houses with that number of bedrooms? Like, you know, I think this is amazing, but I'm just wanting a bit of clarification in terms of how, if we've got a limited resource, maybe if we're putting this kind of additional limits on there with the age range, somebody who's 18 will just go, right, I'll just put myself on the housing register then, make myself homeless. Not that anyone wants to do that, but I'm just thinking logically, would I really want to share with a 10-year-old when I'm 20? I know that's the range, that likelihood is probably very scarce, but how are we going to mitigate that person maybe thinking, I'm out of here then? Because at 20, you definitely want your own space, don't you? 18, 16, whatever.
You
know.
would like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Howe. I'm the Service Manager of the Housing Register and Latics. So this is in the guidance that we, the statutory guidance for housing that we're following this bedroom standard. But we also have exemptions for people that can't share a bedroom. And if somebody did, you know, what you've said here, the example you've given, they went onto the housing register, they're likely to be in a very low band. So it is a very scarce resource, and that is why we're using the bedroom standard rather than local housing allowance. However, and this might confuse things, when somebody is, so that's for overcrowding. When somebody's assessed for what bed need, they should be able to bid on for properties. They will then be assessed under local housing allowance bed size. So somebody could have, they would be able to bid on a 3-bedroom house, but to be assessed as overcrowded and get a banding of overcrowding, then we will assess them, or we're proposing to assess them under the bedroom standard.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a lot clearer. I get what, yeah, I just needed to get it straight in my head. Thank you.
Councillor Ezard, and then Councillor Coyle, and then Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Councillor Beryl Wareham Ward. There's several questions I've got, actually. That last item that you mentioned that was changing about those people that already own houses they rent out. Can you explain that again? Because I didn't quite get that, and I didn't get it in the paper either.
This is something that we hadn't thought about until it was brought up. Basically, I could be sitting in a registered provider's house. I could own another house that is within a company. So say I decide to set up a business renting houses out, and I raise the capital and I buy another house. If I then want to move within my registered providers, and I want to move to another RP house, I still don't own a property because the company owns the property. Therefore, I won't own any properties, and I can tick the box, no, I don't own any. But in actual fact, I own properties that are within a company.
And does that preclude them then?
That's what we want to preclude.
That's what
we want to stop people basically acting as landlords while they're living in registered providers' housing and wanting to move or actually come into the system. Yeah. Basically, I own my own house. I could put my house into a company and then go onto the register.
So it's closing a loophole, isn't it? Basically, it's closing a loophole. Just a technical.
Yeah, quite see that. The other thing that you mentioned was precluding those that are in debt. Is that in housing debt in the past?
It's been in the policy here as it is at the moment that can actually preclude somebody from being on the list. What we're suggesting is that really rent arrears is the main debt, and that would still remain the same if people have rent arrears. But other debts such as housing benefit overpayment or say removal costs from a past move or whatever, that's held against them at the moment, but we're suggesting that we should do away with those non-direct housing costs and just stick with the rent arrears.
Like one-off
Yeah.
things. Yeah. But if they're in debt because they haven't paid the rent in the past,
They're not allowed to apply. No.
they're not allowed to go back on the
not allowed to come on.
allocation register. Right. So that's a difficult one, isn't it? That means they'd be homeless, so you'd have to house them somewhere.
But what we're saying now, Chair, is that in terms of qualification until this is some of a homeless obligation, if they have outstanding debt, then that follows through to just like a normal housing applicant in the sense that they wouldn't be added to the register.
But one other thing is that you said that if you've got income in a household, it could be 2 people, or it could be 3 people that's over 60k, plus now savings of 16k, so that's 60 there, and then they've got 16 between them savings. That's okay, but if they go under that, if they go under, they've got to, just 59,950, whatever, and 15,000, So if they're just under that, then they will be okay. But if they're over that, what happens if they're in that property and that happens? Because as usually your savings will go up as you live in a property. So does that mean that you go from that social housing payment or to a more realistic payment? Is that what I read in the paper?
Basically, what it means is that someone there in a household, and it's 2 people in the household, combined 60,000 plus 16,000 savings. Anything over that, they're not allowed to go on the register.
But the thing is, if they're already in a property.
No, we don't assess. Now, there is a rule which is quite well hidden and not many housing associations know, but technically if a housing association tenant who's living in a property earns more than 60,000 per annum, there is a regulation that states that the housing association can charge a market rent, but it's not well known, and I don't think that the research we did, not many, well, in fact, none of our RPs actually do that. 1 or 2 hadn't actually heard of it. So it's one of these kind of things that are hidden in the depths of regulation somewhere, but they don't do any type of check. Once somebody's in the property, that's it. There's no further check on income or savings.
Yeah, well, I thought there was is a means test or something that goes on, after a few years. So, because people are going to improve their status. And the whole idea was I was in a council house as a child, and then I had a council house as a young family. But I always understood that if your income went up, you saved your money, and then you went and bought a house. I know in my time it was a lot easier than now, but there is the government allowance. I know in the paper it says very often you're in a trap, because if you want to go out and buy your own place, you're still in a trap where you're never going to be £10,000 short. But surely you'll have saved £10,000 or get the government grant, so that actually you don't sit in a council, well, what I call as a council property or a social property, only paying 60% rent of what the private housing rent is. And therefore, you're cheating the system as far as I'm concerned, that you are actually, stopping other people that are actually in a worse condition or worse off than you are from actually getting on the housing. And so is there some way that you could bring in a means tested thing, that you could put a survey out and say, you please give us your status now after they've been in the tenancy for 5 years? Could that not be something you put in the tenancy? That is,
your inbox will be full of complaints on that.
well, I don't know. But that is something that seems like there's something falling through the net here, Because if it, in the past, it was always, from my point of view and our family's point of view, if you could really, you know, earn lots of money, you actually saved
your point
and then
very well.
moved on and moved out of your council property.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to come back on
Yeah,
that?
I think, Chair, a number of years ago, there was perhaps one or two high-profile cases in the national media about people earning a certain amount of money and why on earth should they be living in a council house or a housing association house. And I think possibly in response to that, the government brought in this market rent issue that anyone earning over 60, a housing association could actually then up the rent to a market rent. To be perfectly honest, it never took off. I think it was probably just a moment in time situation. It's not something that RPs do as a matter of course. In fact, I'm not aware of any RPs that do that. That's not to say that there aren't. But once somebody is allocated a tenancy and they're in that tenancy, then there's no further means tests that go ahead after that.
And am I right in thinking that this policy is over and above about allocating
It's
houses?
allocated
It's
the
about
property.
the
It's
waiting
not
list.
about
It's
the
not
ongoing, because
not about
we
ongoing
obviously don't
tenancy.
own any. Well,
Okay, well, I just thought that that was the case. There's still another question I want to ask. Now, when the policy came in, for in 2021, the allocations policy saying that you can't get over 60,000. How many people that applied were turned down at that time, or since that time? Because the lay people in the street wouldn't know that, would they? So how many people have been turned down from, oh, I know you want to go on the, you know, register housing, but afraid, you know, you don't qualify. So how many did it limit? Because before that, it wasn't part of the regulations.
I think before that we were using 5 times the local housing allowance, which actually is be more generous. However, I can't give you that information, but what I can tell you is what we currently got on the register. So 63% of the people on the register are earning up to 20,000. So we've got just under 7,000 people on the housing register at the moment. 62% of those are employment. And then of that, 63% are earning up to 20. And when we're looking at people, say that that are earning up to 50,000, we've got just under 2% that are earning that. There's 68 households altogether. And then earning up to 60,000, there's 1.3% on the register. So it's very low numbers. We're talking 45 households that are coming up to that 60,000. And what you would probably find if I delved even deeper into that, a lot of those would be bandy for older people's housing. So people that need extra care and that kind of accommodation.
Come back and say you wouldn't know that because you haven't. There's no way that you could tell whether that's the case. That's when they come in on the allocation. When they're in the property for 3 or 4 years, they can be earning any amount of money. So your actual survey or whatever you've done there is only based on when they've applied, not when they've been sitting in the property. So anyway, it doesn't matter.
So it applies to a commercial mortgage, though. It's only at that moment in time.
Yes, that's right. So it is only that. I read it all in the paper.
Councillor Taylor,
I did read it all in the paper.
You wanted to speak?
But I am concerned. I am really concerned that there is no way. It's in the regulations that you should be able to check in some way that if people are in properties at that stage, because it is in the regulations. So why don't people apply it?
I very much hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the problem is we can't put that into our allocations policy. This is just the allocating that we do as a part of the nomination when we're allocating people into social housing. The fact that they may then earn 60, 70, 80,000 is down to the RPs to enforce. Because what I don't want is our officers to have to monitor the people that we've allocated housing to and ask them repeatedly how much do they earn, because I think that is really intrusive after they're then in a house. And it also disincentivises people from earning, to be quite honest. And I think if we start fiddling around with these figures a bit, what I don't want to do is to disincentivize anybody from bettering themselves, for want of a better word. If they're offered promotion and they're suddenly dropping off the housing register, what do? Do you stay on the housing register and refuse promotion? I don't think that's the right thing to do for our residents.
You can look at it in lots of different ways. Yes, I just wanted to tease that out. It's not something, I just wanted you to find out whether you would or you wouldn't, all the registered providers would do anything about it.
It's not down to us.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Quayle.
Chair, thank you. Byron Quayle, member for Blandford Forum. Just turning to 4.1.4 exceptions to local connections.
What page is that? Sorry.
And it's page 16. And I'm sure there's some relations or something along the lines, but it says tenants of any English local authority or registered provider, blah, blah, blah. Why English local authority and not across the whole UK? I'm sure there's some sort of devolved regulation somewhere or something. Just sparked my interest.
So the guidance we have is for England. That's the guidance that we're using, and Wales and Scotland do things differently, independently of each other as well.
But, you know, that's guidance that we have. It doesn't mean that we have to say, just because Wales and Scotland do something differently, we can't consider someone moving down. The only reason why I ask is I actually had this exact situation, someone moving down from Dunblane to Blandford. So it just seems if we won United Kingdom, I know they may have a different system, but why would we not be allocating? We could.
I think, Chair, there's still the residential qualification of 2 years. So
this is the exceptions, though. That's what I'm asking.
The exceptions, no.
Yeah. So it just, we have the, but we don't have to follow that. We could say anyone from a registered provider anywhere in the United Kingdom, following the exceptions that we have, blah, 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 could. We are just putting in England local authority because we're saying that because they do things differently in Scotland. It doesn't mean we have to do that. Is that the way I'm reading this, or?
The statutory code of guidance, so we must have regards to that, and we would have to have a really good reason if we challenged if we didn't have that in the policy.
I'm not saying not have that, but I'm saying the English local authority. So if you had someone from Glasgow City Council, down.
So you're suggesting that we
just
keep
take
that and
keep that. Keep that. Yeah, absolutely. Just take up the English local authority, because Wales, a lot of people move down from Wales to work in Dorset. Speaking to someone about it today, funny enough, and this would not include them if they met the other criteria. That's what I'm saying. Why only England? Granted that devolved nations use different things, but it doesn't mean we have to say, oh, well, you're from a devolved nation, tough.
I think Chair, it's a really interesting point, to be honest. I mean, the
I'm
guidance
still tuning this, so that irritates me that we can't say English.
The guidance is for English local authorities, but you know, I just wonder whether we could be discriminating against people coming from.
Well, that's my point. We're one, you know,
other areas.
So sorry. So shall we? I mean, of what we do here, obviously, we don't pass the papers. We recommend them to cabinet.
Yes.
So shall we? Are you proposing that we recommend
that it's just anyone from a local authority, subject to the criteria?
And then obviously there might have to be legal.
Yeah, of course. Within
that,
there may be a devolved regulation that says it, but
I think that sounds on the face of it very sensible. And we
it's
should be using
4.1
the same criteria. Yeah. We'll take that away. And
4.1.4, and if you go down all the bullet points at the bottom, it says tenants of any English local authority or registered provider that need to move to Dorset to work on apprenticeship, factors considering blah blah blah. Well, I don't.
We could caveat, well, not even caveat, just by saying any UK.
Any
resident. Yeah.
So do we need to Do we need to make that an amendment then, or can we like just go through it as a recommendation? Or
Yes, we come back to it.
Doesn't seem much
But
any city changes.
propose it as a recommendation to cabinet if the whole committee is happy, and we'll check with legal services as well before cabinet.
So do we need to vote on that now or at the end?
If we just get a proposal and second for it now and then.
I'm happy to second.
And
So
do
you're
a vote.
proposing it, Mr.
Yes.
Councillor Quayle, and then Councillor Parks, you would like to second that. Do we vote on it now?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a very sensible amendment to me. All in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution.
Chair, just to say my lovely Scottish wife thanks you all.
Okay, so we've got two non-committee members who'd like to speak. Councillor Vitali.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Vitali, I'm the ward member for Stourbridge and Marnell. I should say, first of all, thank you to you, Sarah, for brokering that meeting a couple of months ago with Jane and I, and Neil. It was very helpful. Got three questions, if I may, Chair, not very long. First one is quite a simple one. Councillor Jones pointed out at the start that this policy doesn't increase the number of social housing units that we have, and that's the real key. Has there been a sort of an assessment of what this policy change will do to the wait list? Is there a sense that it will increase it appreciably, decrease it? Has there been a view taken on that?
It's safe to say, Chair, that we'll be carrying out a reassessment of a number of applicants on the waiting list. In some cases, such as residential qualification, that may well add small numbers to the list. I don't think it'll be significant because we already have a 2-year band in there anyway. The overcrowding element, we need to assess each of the applicants, and we've actually made a bid for additional budget to bring in some temporary staff to help us with that reassessment over the next 12 months. So long story short, we haven't done a complete assessment. I think there'll be winners, I can put it this way, winners and losers, or additions and minuses on that, and it may work out quite neutral. I think the numbers, looking at Sarah, would be quite marginal.
Okay, it's 7,000 at present, is that right?
Yeah. So we think we're going to have to reassess about 2,500 of those. Most other people will probably just move over, and we're starting to do that piece of work now, looking at all of that before we go any further.
Okay, great. My two other questions sort of come out of the consultation, actually, which, as you said, was very thorough and very interesting. If I was to make, I'd be interested if you agree with my assessment. If I was to say two things, one is that there is a concern about the local connection changes, which is reflected in some of the feedback, and the other is about this balance that we spoke about, Sarah, between access and fairness within the system. So just on the first point, could you just explain how you landed on the changes for the local connection criteria? So as I read it, you've dropped the close family residency from 5 to 2 years and simplified it, but you've also tightened the employment period 1 to 2 years, or 16 hours per week minimum. Do you know why you landed on that specifically? It seemed quite curious.
That's down to the allocation. The code of guidance for local people. So we have 5 codes of guidance we must adhere to, and in there it recommends 2-year. Gives people enough time to make a connection anywhere. And increasing to 2 years for the employment was more about, there's a lot of employment that may be for fixed term or very short term. So by having it 2 years, where then people are actually making that real commitment to being in the area and not leaving after 10 months or 11 months or something.
And partly it's to do with standardising it, so it's kind of...
Yeah, standardising it, yeah.
Okay. And then finally, just to the earnings threshold, I made my views about that sort of clear when we spoke. Did we take any other advice than that from Mr. Morland on the subject? I mean, he's very knowledgeable in the area, but I know that he wrote the last policy. I know he's recommended basically the same thing for all the other councils he's worked with. In the interest of diversity of views on the subject, did we take advice or counsel from anyone else?
I think what we did, Chair, we obviously weighed heavily on his advice in respect of his kind of national knowledge, but we did a quick check of our neighbouring councils. So Wiltshire, they're at 60,000, although there's a question mark over that. It might be 80, but certainly 60 plus 16, so it's similar. Bournemouth, they say they assess everyone individually, but were unable to give us the assessment criteria that they apply. So that's a bit of a mystery. And Somerset used the local housing allowance ×5 for their assessment. So roundabout it's a mixed bag, but Wiltshire is on a par, or we're on a par, or whoever's on a par with that.
I can also add to that. I did
New information as we go along.
Had a look at a few more. So Hampshire, the same as well, 60,000 and 60,000 earnings and 16 savings. Gloucester had £60,000 earnings and no limit on savings. You'd be assessed at that point. They would decide whether you could actually manage elsewhere. So yeah, it was interesting. Say Wiltshire, it was 16,000 savings as well as the £60,000 earnings.
Well, I'll finish. I'll just say, because I think worth me putting it on the record, that there's a good examples, useful examples. I've looked at others where it's different. I think our priority is to make good policy for Dorset, and that might not necessarily always be following what other counties do. I do think there is a point for residents in the county about situations, there may be few, where a low-income family is paying for the housing of someone on considerably higher income. I do worry about that, and I think that is reflected in the consultation and the response we've got from it. I was always quite interested in the model where you split the earnings threshold between households and individuals. I raised that for discussion. But there's a lot in here that I think is good. I think the banding system's sensible. I think a lot of the rationalizations are merited. But yeah, we need to make sure this works as much for those who are paying for the policy as those who are using it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale Ward. We all get very heart-rending emails about, please can you help me get a house? I've been made homeless in Lynch. I'm now in Wimborne, but I want a house back in. And that number of £60,000, while we were talking, you can get a mortgage of £300,000 for £60,000. And the average price of a house in Dorset is £332,000. When I get those horrible emails, if I emailed them back and said, yes, but there are 7,000 people on the waiting list, but 200 of those people actually earn, 230 of those people earn between 50 and 60,000 pounds. I think those people would be disappointed. That 60,000 ceiling does seem a strange number, doesn't it? A friend of mine who's a mortgage broker also said, send them to him and he'll get them a mortgage and he'll pay you a commission. Ho ho. But that 60,000 number doesn't seem right when the average salary in the UK is 35 for a scarce resource.
I think, Chair, that there will always be people very close to the threshold that you feel might be a bit unfair, but you've got to set a threshold. And what we've tried to do is to look at national kind of figures. We've looked at things like the 60,000 in the government policy regarding market rents. 60,000 seems quite common. I think if you look at the government's rent standard calculation, there's a formula there with 60,000 in there as being a kind of reasonable threshold. So we're really just trying to go from what we know and what we can use and what other people have used as a reasonable threshold. Bearing in mind, of course, that it's not always about buying something else, as the private rented sector as well, and access to the private rented sector. So it's not just one or the other. There are different options that exist.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor.
If I can just add a little bit to this, I totally see where you're coming from. I really do. The only thing I asked for the numbers that we've got on the register at the moment, just to see what we're actually talking about. How many individuals are we talking about? And out of our 7,000, there's only 45 who are between 50 and 60. And I think that's the figures I've been given are 1.3%. It's a really tiny bit. Just slightly in favour of those. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. We quite often have large estates of, say, 30, 40 houses that are all in the registered providers domain, and we're allocating to. We want to make a mixed community of people. We don't want all people who are under 20,000. We don't want all people under 30,000. We want a mixed community. And having one or two people on this higher salary actually helps us to create these mixed communities. The chances of them getting allocated for just one of our ordinary transfer houses is pretty slim. And as Sarah said a little while ago, if we actually looked at those, they'd probably all be on debanding anyway. So I think we need to keep this in proportion a little bit. Interestingly, when I read this first of all, I looked at the 60,000 and I said, okay, that was 5 years ago. Why don't we link it to the rate of inflation? And that comes out to about 74. So that was my sort of starting gambit on this. But I'm very much persuaded that 60, we stick at that, because I'm aware that there was some opposition to that. Does that make sense?
I understand where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you happy?
Yep.
Councillor Izzard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Beryl from Wareham. Going on from that, I mean, it seems like you're assuming, Councillor that spoke before, that there's one income in this household. Actually, it's a combination of the income, isn't it, in that house? So you could have 2 or 3 people contributing to that house. Is it just 2? Is it just the 2? Even if you have a teenager that's earning, and is things like child allowance, is that counted in that as well as income? Children's allowance, you know.
Child benefit.
Yes.
Yes, so that's all included.
That's all included, is it? Yeah, so I didn't know whether that was an exception. But the thing is, you know, if you've got 2 people that were on 29,000, whatever, or just one on 31 and one on 29, you've done it, you've made it. And there's quite a lot of people. And I know one of my children worked on shift work, and he was over that in his 50s. So he's in rented accommodation. So it is difficult for people to actually save and get a mortgage, but there are, if you want to get on the ladder, you can buy properties, even in Wareham and Swanage, in my area. If you look, you can get them for about £100,000 if you're willing to buy a flat and then up that after a couple of years. But, you know, demean yourself for a while and then actually pick up on that after a few years. And that sometimes is something you can do, because the government can only help certain age groups to give them certain loans or grants between, is it 30 and 45 or something like that, to help them, you know, if you've got the help to buy or something.
Bringing it back to this policy.
I know this is something different, but there are ways and means. But anyway, yes, so the allocation policy from this point of view is that, you know, two people in the household up to 60,000 is easily done. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, agreed. Councillor Furman.
Thank you. Okay, so Thank you very much, officers, and Jill for, sorry, Councillor Taylor, for making me late on Friday. I did have 25 points about this policy.
He did.
I read it properly. I wanted it to be good. So, yeah. So, couple of observations I just wanted to share with the committee, and I do have some proposed amendments that due to support or not. So, various times through the document, I think it's nice for us to have that particular data set. It makes reference, for example, those saving for house purchases on the private market, but it doesn't mention any data. It talks about unacceptable behaviour in point 4.9 and 4.10. I don't think, for the record, that housing associations enforce those particularly well. I feel like our registered providers do what's easy rather than what's right. I think that's to the detriment of people who really do need housing, which is a shame. So I'm looking at in terms of an amendment. So we've got 4.12 on page 43. It's 15 of the report, but page 43 if you're looking on ModGov. So I did raise this to officers, but I've been thinking about it. So on 4.12 it said, have any association with close family defined as adult children, parents, siblings, or someone else who can be regarded as a near relative reside in Dorset council area by their own choice for a minimum of 2 years. I got clarity from officers on this, members, and so it basically means if somebody from Newcastle moves here, buys a house, within 2 years, their parents, their sister, their children can come down onto our housing register. For me, that doesn't quite feel right. 2 years. It was originally 5 years. I think it should remain 5 years. I think you should have a real good link to Dorset if you're going to benefit from the housing providers that we have. So my amendment would be within this is that point for a minimum of 2 years, which should be a minimum of 5 years.
Should we take that one, and then if you've got more amendments, should we take that amendment?
I do have more amendments, yeah.
Do you want to take them one by one?
Yeah, so I'd like to
propose that. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, James.
Would like to. Councillor Holloway would like to second that. Can we have a show of hands who would like to? What does anyone want to speak about that proposed amendment? Councillor Mercer.
Could we just ask?
Sorry, Steve, were you going to ask officers to?
What implication?
Yeah.
I think, Chair, we're looking at the national guidance, which is recommending a kind of consistent 2 years to make it simple, straightforward, people understand it. So that was the main driver, was the statutory guidance. I think the problem that you might have, and it's always a question that the consultant says, well, if you were challenged in court, could you defend it? And if statutory guidance is saying we recommend 2 years, it'd have to be a really strong argument that we went for 5. So
even if we voted the amendment through, it would have to go through legal services, wouldn't it?
I think that would be preferable. Yeah.
Okay. But we could still vote on it, could we?
Yeah, you could still.
We can still recommend it, and then legal services may or may not. Okay. Anybody want to speak to the item before gone?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barrows-Rivera. I think we had in the past we had this at the district council where it went gradually down from 5 to 3. I think we went down to 2. That was at the Purbeck District Council, and I don't know if the officer behind you knows that because she was on the district council. And it did make quite big difficulties for 5 years for people, especially if they had it was a mum or something that was moving because she was wanted to be nearer children, and she was quite infirm at that point, and thought, well, I've got to move. I've got to wait for 5 years to move it near my children. So 2 years is a much fairer situation if you think of it like that, rather than the children coming to be where the mother is. It's the opposite way around. And I had several cases of that happen to me, and I'm thinking, oh dear, that was really unfair. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think we should go ahead and vote on who would support us recommending to Cabinet that we keep it at 5 years. Please can we get a show of hands who is in favour of that? Thank you. And can we get a show of hands who is against? And can we get a show of hands who would like to abstain? Okay, thank you very much. So thank you. Councillor Furman, how many more amendments have you got?
Enough. Next one is 4.15, which ModGov is page 45, and on the report is page 17. It'll be perhaps an easy one, and I'll defer to officers. I didn't raise it on Friday. I apologise. But it said about having savings of 16,000. I'd just like to add all assets as well, because you can savings don't. If I had stocks and shares, that doesn't really count as savings. But it would count as an asset. So I think just adding that in just tightens it up a little bit.
So which bullet point are you on?
So it's just in the qualification 4.15.
Lots of bullet points. How far down the page are you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 4.15 and the second bullet point. Councillor Parks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just having 16,000 of assets or savings or assets.
I think that's worth noting. If you had, for example, a vintage car or something, why would you not? Yeah, okay. So you're proposing that as an amendment?
Yeah.
I would like to second that. Would anyone like to speak to that item? Shall we just go straight to a show of? Does anybody over here want to make a comment about that? No. Okay.
Can I
go ahead
to legal services again, just in case it's something in statutory guidance?
Yes, but so we would recommend that, but it would have to go through legal. That is yes. Thank you for keeping me on track. So who would vote in favour to amend the policy in that way? Okay, who would like to vote against that? And who would like to abstain? Okay, thank you. One, tell me how many more you've got, Councillor Furman.
Enough. And then page 50, which is page 22 in the report. It was just a note for the record, please, that when we, because I understand that we do checks, and when we will look to do annual checks, which officers haven't spoken about today, but I think is really quite good and meets the challenges of members to talk about ensuring that those most in need remain and are on our register. So thank you for that. But it just for the record that we do investigate other councils that use schemes for this rather than just paper trail, because at the moment we process with the evidence that we're given, not the evidence we can get access to through different organisations, through government and such, to check bank accounts and things like that. So it's just noted for the record that we should be looking for our officers to engage in those schemes where we can do thorough checks on those applying to make sure we get, again, the right people, get the right help or support rather. I think that's about it. I did think the consultation, just a note for officers, I did think the consultation, we do need to do some more engagement around getting that out to our community. There was a big uptake in the customer in terms of who's using the social housing and those registered providers, but I push back, and I do think that the customer is everybody in Dorset, the taxpayer particularly, and the users. It's not, it did feel like this was the results came as a sort of a social housing tenant-esque theme to them in terms of their results. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas, but we do need to be really mindful that it's all residents that have a stake within our social housing network, and we should make sure that we take all of those views and get an opportunity for those to input into it. And that's all I have, Chair, but I will come back on the tenancy policy as well.
Indeed, we will see about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, officers.
I would like to draw this item to a close now. I think we've talked about it enough. It is It is 10 to 9 and we have been here for more than 2 hours and we've still got an item left on the agenda, so I would like to move this forward. So the recommendation is that we recommend this to Cabinet. The recommendation is in your papers. There we are. We endorse the proposed changes set out in the report. That we note the outcome of the consultation and we recommend to Cabinet the allocations policy as amended, and we do recognise that would need to go through legal services. Thank you for go on.
Before you do a vote on that, can I just check? The corporate director mentions about another amendment that hasn't been added into this published version of the report.
Oh, the appendix thing that came round.
Well?
I think I mean, yes. Do we need to vote on including that in, or do we just? I thought we would take that appendix as given. I'm just reminding members of mine. So there we are. So we're reminding the committee that we have that's as amended by the amendment that Ian told us about at the beginning. Okay, thank you. Who would like to propose that we recommend this to Cabinet? Would anybody like to propose that? Councillor Furman, would you like to second? Councillor Atwell. Okay, and who is in favour of recommending this to Cabinet? You. Is anybody against? Thank you. And would anybody like to abstain? There we are. Thank you. We are on our last paper now. We are on item 10 in the agenda, Dorset tenancy strategy. I am going to turn my attention again to Councillor Jill Taylor.
Councillor Jill Taylor, and I forgot to introduce myself this evening. I'm the Cabinet member for Health and Housing. Tenancy strategy. Once again, I'd like to thank the committee for reviewing the new policy, which is the Dorset Council's tenancy strategy 2026 to 2031. This strategy is a requirement set out in the 2011 Localism Act and informs registered providers in Dorset of our expectations for the types of tenancy they provide and other matters. Registered providers must have their own policies in place, but they are required to have due regard for this document in drafting their own policies. It has been consulted on with RPs in Dorset and they have endorsed our approach. I look forward to the discussion and would like to hand over to Ian Sim again to present the details of this paper and look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Ian Sim, Corporate Director of Housing and Community Safety. So we have another non-contentious report. As Councillor Taylor says, it's a legal requirement under Localism Act to have a tenancy strategy. It's the first one that we have developed. And it looks to bring together, it feeds off the allocations policy, rough sleeping strategy, homelessness strategy, housing strategy. So it feeds off all that, and it gives a expectation requirement for RPs to hit certain standards in what they're doing within Dorset. And I think, Chair, to cut to the chase, the objectives of the policy as written in the report, I think I would just like to just reaffirm what they are, because I think that just covers it really nicely. So basically, the objectives are to ensure that tenants are provided with the most secure form of accommodation available to encourage sustainable communities, to help provide housing to those in greatest need, to optimise the use of social housing stock in the Dorset Council area, to help minimise and prevent homelessness, to ensure that housing is provided in a fair and consistent manner across the Dorset Council area, and to encourage registered providers to develop tenancy policies that adhere to this tenancy strategy and legislative requirements. I would just finish by saying that we are not the regulator of registered providers. That's carried out independently by the register for the regulator for social housing. So it's not mandatory, but having said that, housing associations and RPs have a duty to cooperate with the statutory housing authority. So, and Having said that, with the consultations that we've had, basically all that we work with were in favour. Didn't see a particular issue. And to be perfectly honest, it's what good RP should be doing. I'm happy to take any questions on the strategy.
Lovely. So to start with, I would like to focus on, questions about the strategy rather than comments. Has anyone got any questions for us? Would anyone like to make, would anyone like to make any comments? Councillor Furman.
Okay, looking at page 186 of ModGov, page 18 of the report, where it's bullet pointed members underneath. It refers to in two paragraphs how a registered provider might make a decision based on a tenancy renewal, and specifically it pertains to what we'd expect that RP to avoid. Excuse me, I'm in the cold. So it says we expect registered providers to avoid including tenant rent arrears in a decision on a tenancy renewal. I'm not sure in any situation where you don't fulfill your obligation. So for what you would like more of that service, we will not consider what your obligation was. It just feels a juxtaposition for me. I take the point from officers that tell me we expect registered providers to prioritise over methods to resolve rent arrears, but it's not strong enough for me. I don't feel that our registered providers are doing a good enough job in ensuring that the most needed are in the houses, and those that are taking advantage of the system and not living up to their end of the bargain, that are having those consequences. So I feel that particularly in this policy, we shouldn't be asking our registered providers to just avoid taking rent arrears or antisocial behaviour out of the equation, because we already know that they're not following through on those protocols. I'm sure some of us members have those examples within our communities where we've got particularly antisocial behaviour. Certainly in my ward, we've got drug use within RP blocks, and they remain there for years and years. But ironclad, the policy, there will be exceptions to it, but I don't want us to have exceptions. I want a policy to be what it's there for. And I do not think that having an avoidance to include arrears or antisocial behaviour in a tenancy renewal is good policy, when there are more deserving families and needs out there that can behave, that can pay their end of the rent and be in social housing. So I will be either looking for some rewording on this, but I would like, if there is any advice from members or expertise in previous administrations that could make clear how we can take this out and ensure that they don't avoid including tenant rents or antisocial behaviour in their judgment of tenancy renewals.
I wonder, would you like to make a comment over?
I'll start, but perhaps others will finish. The whole intent of that particular section was to make sure that RPs had good, solid policies to deal with antisocial behaviour and or rent arrears, and there'll be there's an expectation that they will have been really working hard to administer those policies and to make sure that that tenancy was looked after, and that everything had been done at the point to make sure that arrears were paid off or the antisocial behaviour was under control. We are looking at changing the wording a little bit on that, because there are different degrees of, say, rent arrears or nuisance. It might well be the case that when a fixed term tenancy comes to an end, there is perhaps a bit of debt, I'll use that technical term, a bit of debt, but there is a agreement in place to pay it off. We shouldn't expect housing associations to just look at that and think, well, you haven't paid your rent for that X amount of time, we're not going to renew your tenancy, because then you're looking at the homeless situation, who picks up that homeless situation. when you end the tenancy. But we're not going soft on it. It's just that it's recognising that they've got to have done everything they can, and we've got to be convinced of that. But that in itself is not a reason per se. But if somebody is really just abusing the system in terms of just, I'm not paying the rent, or I'm just playing at it, and there are, you know, really active, serious antisocial concerns about it, then there would certainly be an expectation that that fixed tenancy wouldn't be renewed, unless there were extenuating circumstances and there were needs and other special requirements associated with that tenancy. So I think I would set that level of degree in terms of, I don't think we can just say, if there's arrears, we're not going to end the tenancy. If there's a little bit of antisocial behaviour, we need to make sure you've looked into it and are managing it. So I don't know whether Sharon wants to
Did
answer
you say
that.
you're rewording the policy? Because at the moment that nuance doesn't come out, does it? Are you saying you're rewording it and that will be more clear?
I'm hoping so.
Sharon Atwater, Service Manager for Housing Strategy and Performance, and it was really great to talk with Councillor Furman on Friday. And I have drafted a suggestion to add, we've got, I don't know if you have page 18 of the strategy, but there is a section that I think I would like to add some words to say that we would welcome an approach where breaches of tenancy, for example, rent arrears, antisocial behaviour and damaging property, are dealt with under normal possession processes, allowing a court to consider the case. The remainder of the wording slightly above and underneath, talking about rent arrears and antisocial behaviour, and our use of the word to avoid, and with reflection on renewals, I think would be better understood if we put that change in front. And when we're talking about, most people in Dorset are already being issued lifetime tenancies. So for most examples, when we're looking at tenancy renewals, we're looking at short-term tenancies that are particularly going to be renewed. The intention of this wording is to indicate to RPs, who we cannot instruct, but that we would like you, if you have clients who have these types of behaviours, whether they're rent arrears or antisocial behaviour, other things that would form a breach of tenancy, that you follow the right protocols. You do that at the earliest opportunity, because you would need to be doing that if you were looking to evict in a court. But if you're going to wait, in the number of cases where maybe a renewal is an issue and a factor that you need to consider, we're saying you shouldn't be waiting until that point and using that renewal process. What we would really like to encourage them to do is, when they're thinking about renewing, is the property still right for the individual? Do they have unused substantial adaptations? Those kinds of things. But we recognise that if a situation, for instance, where you had a tenant who was low level arrears, not something that's going to force or to suggest a tenant, a RP wants to take that type of a tenancy eviction action, they're repeatedly failing in and then doing a bit and then coming back to their payment arrangements, for instance, that there are those types of situations where they can use those considerations, that information that they have at that tenancy renewal point. I hope that makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, Chair, may I? So your reference to the nuance that Steve alluded to, and now you have Sharon. Perfect. That teases me.
So those changes are in the proposed policy of it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll put them through as an amendment, and I'll let you have the exact wording of those.
Yeah, can we just get agreement from the committee?
Okay.
Making that change.
So do we need a proposer and a seconder and everything? Are you
No,
or
just a
show of hands? Do we agree that that's a sensible idea? Would anybody like to go on?
We're just not sure. Right, so we need absolute clarity what's in it though. Like I feel awkward about
just
still voting for something that I haven't actually seen the wording for. So You know,
email it round.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind,
What, right now?
yeah, if you've got it, that would be great, Jill, just so I
Okay.
can see what I'm voting for.
If I send it to you and then.
Or if it's short, just read it out.
Sending it on. If you look at which pair are we talking about, guys? Page 18. You've got two lots of bullet points below that, below the next paragraph. The one that starts off, we also expect registered providers to avoid including. I haven't got a copy of.
I'm press that up on the screen.
Oh, thank you, George. Oh, but I notice it is already in our inboxes as well, is it?
Yes, and I've forwarded it around as well.
I love that.
I think if we remove the section, the line that starts, welcome approach where any breaches of tenancy, brackets, for example, rent arrears, etc. Move that sentence in front of the line with the red asterisk that starts, we expect registered providers, immediately under the bullet point. That sets out circumstances dealing with a breach of tenancy, and then we run the rest of the words as they're written. Closing.
You want to speak, Councillor Azad? You want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I can't read it. Can you make it bigger?
It's come. You've got it in your inbox as well.
Really?
Councillor Mercer's got it for you.
Sorry, I didn't realise.
No, thank you out.
So has everyone had a chance to have a look at that? Would anybody like to comment further? Are you happy? Are
Yes,
you?
thank you.
Thank
It's better to see it.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I thank you for your diligence. So should we have another show of hands who would like to approve that wording as set out in front of us? Lovely, that's everyone. Do I still need to ask if people who wants to vote against?
No, everyone's in.
Everyone's in favour. Fantastic. Right. Right. I'm lost now. Where are we? We're with the. Would anybody else like to make any other comments on this policy at all? Okay, so so the recommendation is there we go. The recommendation is to recommend the Dorset Council Tenancy Strategy 2026-2031 to Cabinet for approval.
Subject to that.
Subject to the amendments we've made, subject to legal services. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Who would anybody like to propose that? Councillor Jones would like to propose that. Would you like to second it, Councillor Atwell? Okay. Who? Let's see. Have a show of hands. Who would like to? Everybody has voted for the motion. Nobody's voting against and nobody's abstaining. We all voted for. We are now on to number 11, the work programme. Go ahead.
So can I just check the housing standards enforcement policy and statement? It said that it was coming to this committee and the date's still in there as coming to this committee with decision made on the 3rd of March. We've obviously not seen it today. Could we get an idea of when we're going to see it?
Yes, that item will be coming to this committee at an additional meeting on the 16th of March. And because we're putting in an additional meeting, there might be another meeting that can be cancelled if there's insufficient business for that. But we'll have to look at that and see what business there is coming to.
Thanks, George. Thank you.
Will enable us to stick to our 6 meetings a year. Yeah. Question. Has anybody got anything else they want to say about the work programme? I'm going to say that, I mean, as members of this committee, what I would like us to be like Councillor Furman in terms of reading the work programme, keeping an eye on it, actively looking at it, speaking to our cabinet members, speaking to heads of so basically, you know, actively taking responsibility for what we're going to look at as a committee, because that is within our power. So I would welcome anybody with questions similar to Councillor Furman's. I would welcome anybody who would like, you know, anybody who wants to call in a paper, anybody, if you see anything on the horizon that you would like to talk about, do speak to myself or Councillor Atwell or George. Any other comments on the forward work programme? Okay.
Can I just, I thought we were going to have a joint committee with that's all been.
That's disappeared into these.
That's no longer relevant to me.
I
can't.
Weatherspoon.
That's no longer relevant, George said.
Yes. Exactly what it was about, but I will email you.
Councillor Taylor.
That was to do with the
Going to be here that long.
using our assets for development. That was slightly superseded by the paper that went through on the disposal of assets a couple of months ago, because we've got the permission to dispose assets within there. So we've basically got permission just to go ahead with what sort of what we were planned and what was also in last April housing paper on the new models of delivery.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right. Everyone's already packed up. I'm a teacher. I would normally say, like, well, you have to unpack your stuff and I'll tell you when to pack up. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say there's no exempt business and I'm closing the meeting at 12.